Pete Golding is 1 for 1 as a coach, as a head coach of the Ole Miss Rebels. Big 41-10 win over Tulane in the college football playoff. A lot of questions going into this one. How Ole Miss would fare losing Lane Kiffin to LSU. Well, so far, so good as they now prepare for the quarterfinal round of the college football playoff. Welcome to Southeast Sports Plus, hour number 2 here on this Monday. Early happy holidays and Merry Christmas to you and yours. Thank you so much for joining us. Patrick, this is a really interesting situation for Ole Miss because all the talking points going into this game were the two coaches on the opposite sidelines. Both programs going through a coaching change. One was like, this is the way to handle it in the Tulane situation where, John Summerall wearing both hats. The other one was the way not to handle it. Yeah, 2 phones and everything else. The other one was the way not to handle it with Lane Kiffin and all the distractions there. A lot of potential distractions, but great job there for Coach for Pete Golding and company to be able to keep the guys, level-headed, ready, and they executed on Saturday.
Well, I mean, I go back to his speech to the players after Lane Kiffin officially left for LSU on that Sunday right after Black Friday. And I was just like, man, this guy is fired up. Just a complete 180 from what, Lane Kiffin is in these press conferences and stuff like that.
Right.
Pete Golding has to say, I gotta watch the cussing and like stuff like that and like all of his press conferences. Which, I mean, he is the guy that Ole Miss needs right now, though.
Yeah.
And I think he had those guys fired up. And they listened to the noise and everyone was like, yeah, man, there's so much distraction around this program right now. I think Tulane's just gonna, honestly, I think they might win this game. Ole Miss kind of pulled away late in the first game. John Summerall's going to Florida. He's got a great offense there. Jake Retzlaff's a former P4 quarterback over at BYU. I think they win this game. And as we mentioned in hour number 1, it took 3 plays going 75 yards for Ole Miss to go up 7-0. And at that point, I think I texted you. I was like, yeah, this team's going to the net.
It's over.
Which is a little bit of an overreaction.
It might be, but the fact that they were able to come right out of the gate like that, and if they had that momentum moving forward, your pick might come true where this Ole Miss team can just use that momentum moving forward. Right. And I think that player 1 to player 100, they're the best team in college football? I do not. Are they playing about the best as you possibly can with the extra added incentive of, being able to show that it's not a Lane Kiffin built organization?
Yes.
I do think that's the case. And so I do, that's not crazy to me to think that this team can use this game to make a run. It just felt like I said at the beginning last week, I said, hey, this team will show you what they are in the first few minutes of the game. Right. I don't think they were able to claw themselves out of a hole had Tulane gone up in that game.
No, and I think we'll talk a little bit about the next game against Georgia at the Sugar Bowl here in just a few minutes. But one thing that we did find out this weekend is that Lane Kiffin is worth approximately 4 points because they beat him 41-10 instead of 45-10 like the regular season. But can we talk about the job that Charlie Weiss Jr. just did?
Oh, yeah. He called a great game.
I mean, there was so much talk about Lane Kiffin's not going to be the play caller and this and that and, what's this offense going to look like? But the job that Charlie Weiss Jr. did for this Ole Miss team, obviously a 41-10 win. Trinidad Chambliss, man, this guy is just unreal. 318 total yards. Didn't have as great of a game as he did the first time around, but, it's hard to follow up one good performance with another against the same team, no matter what level they're at. And then, as we mentioned in hour number 1, Tulane over 400 total yards and just 1 touchdown and a field goal.
Yeah, so this was a dominating performance, really from Jump Street. But I think if you're Ole Miss, you have to be thinking long and hard about what this means for the program moving forward. Because if Trinidad Chambliss does come back to this team, and Pete Golding is obviously coming back to this team, and if they can retain a lot of that coaching staff, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if the expectation next year is, hey, we deserve another seat at this table and be able to make another run at the college football playoff. I just think that in most coaching situations, when you lose a guy like a Lane Kiffin, who had such a positive impact on the team, the natural thought is this team is going to take a step back. There's going to be a natural regression. I don't think that way with Ole Miss. I think that they can just continue to carry that momentum, which is different in college sports, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, and I think I don't remember exactly his name, but they got the guy coming over from East Carolina, and East Carolina had a pretty good offense this year. And then they've got Joe Judge still as quarterback's coach, which I still think Joe Judge is he should get more credit for developing not only Trinidad Chambliss but also Jackson Dart in the last few years. It didn't work out. I mean, it didn't really work out at all for the Giants. But I mean, Marcus Freeman's now being thrown out there for that job.
The favorite. And, Is he still the favorite?
Yeah, he's officially the favorite. And I'm like, dude, just stay at Notre Dame. I mean, like, the Giants and the Jets, just stay as far away from them as possible. You don't want to go to that. I mean, you're just setting yourself up for failure. If Brian Dable couldn't make it work, you definitely can't make it work. But anyways, besides the point, Frank Wilson now coming over as a running backs coach. We officially have that trade from general manager and running backs coach to both LSU and Ole Miss. I mean, the one going, the two going to LSU was pretty much expected. Because I mean, Lane was like, "Hey, come with me, or else you won't have a job." But I think that Frank Wilson going up to Ole Miss was a little bit of a shocker. But Trinidad Chambliss, I in my opinion, I know I've talked about how I went to an Ole Miss game once.
The South Carolina
game. Mm-hmm. I think for him, I think he should stay because I have a feeling that Lane Kiffin's going to try to go for the big fish and just try to get Lagway or Sam Levitt or maybe even Josh Hoover. I almost said Max Duggan.
Yeah.
That was almost bad. But Trinidad Chambliss with a great game, 23 for 29, 282 pass yards, that 93.3 QBR. I mean, if he does, my guess is he's going to file for a waiver. I don't know if he's going to get it. But at the same time, why don't we have this conversation? Why is he trying to come back? Why doesn't he just try to get drafted? Because all you're doing coming back is risking injury,
right?
And potentially,
and it's a deeper quarterback class next time around. You have to assume that Arch is coming out. You'd have to assume if Ty Simpson comes back to school,
I think he gets drafted. Yeah, probably third or fourth round.
Right.
I mean, I don't think your stock's going to be higher than this just because of that class next year.
Right. I do think that a lot of it will depend on how they do here in this college football playoff. I think if they lose if they make it all the way to the championship game, he'll be talked about so much, and there'll be so much more footage on him against great defenses that I do think that he'll be able to make a run there to increase his draft stock enough to where, hey, if he's going to balance out, am I making a decision to come back to school and make, let's call it $3 million, or if you are going to go pro and make the equivalent, maybe a little bit less than that, as a third round, fourth round pick. I think that's where it is. I think that if he doesn't think that he's a first round picks typically guaranteed around $20 million. Right. And if you can stay in school and still make a fraction of that, I think that would be the case. But I'm right there with you. I think that you strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah.
In his situation, his iron's hot right now.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't a top 5 quarterback taken off the board this year, but just because this year's quarterback class is so weak.
Right.
I mean, it's going to be Mendoza going number 1 overall unless the Titans win. Well, no, the Titans just won this past weekend, so I mean they're not going to get the number 1 overall pick.
It'll be
the Giants potentially.
Yeah, Giants will have a spot.
Which we keep hearing, will they trade Jackson Dart?
That's all the talk has been.
I mean,
all
as a Cowboys fan, I'd like that. Get Jackson Dart out of my division. I think he's. I think I've said on the show a few times. I think Jackson Dart's going to be the best quarterback out of last year's class.
Me too.
As much as I want to respect Cam Ward, I think the pieces are starting to align here. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you played a Chiefs team that was on their third quarterback, Gardner Minshew.
Right.
Thankfully, did not tear his ACL, so you didn't go 2 straight weeks with an ACL tear out of your quarterback.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think Trinidad should at least explore the draft.
Going into the draft, because whoever the new coach is in New York will want his own guy, obviously. So that's the reason why you get a lot of the trade rumors for him leaving that area. But I'm with you, though.
I tell you what, there's another guy that's going to be a hot commodity, whether it's this year or it's next year. It's Kewan Lacey.
Oh,
this
no
guy's
question.
Unreal.
Yeah, he's been absolutely phenomenal. And I think it was about the middle of the year he was flirting with being the top rusher. He was one of the top rushers in the SEC alongside Ahmad Hardy and a few others. But he is such a dynamic weapon for what they try to do offensively, because it's not, to me, they don't see them as a dominating running team, but he has dominating games. Yep. If that makes sense. It's not like they just line it up and do what they used to do at Alabama with Trent Richardson and Derrick Henry and all those guys. But he is such a integral piece to what they try to do offensively to help open things up for Chambliss and company.
I think Trinidad being a dual threat quarterback also helps open up the run game. And when we talk about Winnie Watkins and Harrison Wallace out on the perimeter there, it definitely helps having those weapons. I think Ole Miss might have locked up their wide receivers coach for the future too, and he's like a players. He's a players type of guy. So I don't necessarily want the Ole Miss season to be over by any means, but I'm looking forward to seeing who stays and who actually enters the portal and follows Kiffin to LSU, because I honestly think it's not going to be as many people as some might think, just because they had to deal with this basically the entire back half of the season,
right?
And all they did was just win a bunch of games, blow out a couple teams. I think the closest call was probably against Florida,
right.
I mean, maybe for a little bit the South Carolina game was like, what is Trinidad doing here? But I think the biggest thing when you look ahead towards this next game is that both Trinidad Chambliss and Keywan Lacey avoid injury, because Keywan came down hard in the first half, kind of holding his ribs a little bit.
Right.
It later came out that he had a shoulder problem, and then Trinidad was a little shaken up at the end of the first half.
Yeah, and you kind of wanted these guys to stay healthy, as you said. But also, too, about the transfer portal, I think if they win on January 1st. The portal opens on January 2nd. You won't have a lot of guys that enter because they are now seeing themselves 2 wins away from a national championship and doing it without Lane Kiffin. So it's like you have proof of concept, so to speak. You have proof of concept like, hey, we don't need these guys. It's us. And like you said, I think that Pete Golding's not going anywhere. And then one of the smartest things Ole Miss did was to say he's not the interim coach, he's the permanent coach.
Correct.
And so it just feels like there's a lot more stability now with Pete Golding there. And then if they can once again win on New Year's Day, I feel like you're in a good spot there if you're an Ole Miss fan.
Yeah, and Pete Golding is going to be in Oxford next year, and he's been trying hard to keep one coordinator in Oxford. It's probably not going to work. And Charlie Weiss Jr., let's hear what he had to say about his offensive coordinator following the win over Tulane.
I had zero concern with Charlie Weiss calling this game for this one reason. Charlie Weiss could not afford not to call a hell of a game. All right, all he's heard, right, his whole life, Lane Kiffin's office, Lane Kiffin's office, Lane Kiffin's office. So this is his one opportunity, right, for people to realize Charlie Weiss calls the offense, right, just like he's done all year, and he did a great job of tonight. So I had no concern on that, because the last thing Charlie wanted to do is come out here and lay an egg, all right, because then whose offense is it? Yeah, you be writing about it. Whose offense is it? That's right. Did you say his name? Whose offense is it? Okay. No, you just said Kiff's. Yeah, because he didn't score any points, so Kiff wasn't here. Right, so then now Charlie doesn't call the plays. So Charlie does a great job, and there was zero concern with him. Like I said, from the very beginning, he didn't get on that plane with any doubt that he was going to coach us in the game, because that's who he is. All right, so he did a great job.
A lot of coach speak when it comes to press conferences, and you will just get a lot of guys that are they dance around the edges of the truth, and then there's some guys who just talk about the truth as it really is, and that to me is the most honest assessment of Charlie Weiss, because he was pointing out the elephant in the room. The fact that all the writers would say, well, this is Lane Kiffin's offense, and making it seem like Charlie Weiss did not have as much of an impact. Yeah. He hit it on the head, saying, no, there was pressure for him to call a good game. He couldn't afford to not call a good game, because then it's all tarnished from there on out that you're just holding the water for Lane Kiffin.
I think the only difference if Lane Kiffin were calling the plays in this game is we probably would have seen a few more trick plays. Like that's just what Lane Kiffin does with his offenses. And, I mean, he almost reminds me of Kellen Moore, the now head coach of the
Eagles, or of the
Saints. Yeah, I mean, when Kellen Moore was in Dallas, we saw Dallas do all of these trick plays and everything. And, everyone was like, yeah, he's an offensive genius. But when they wouldn't work, I mean, these offenses were not good at all.
Exactly.
And so that's why I think Charlie Weiss Jr. had something to prove here this weekend. And not only that, but, I mean, he kind of did earn his boss $250,000 there. But his boss is going to be hoping that they can win this next one so he can earn some more money. And it's going to be a rematch of another rematch for Ole Miss against the Georgia Bulldogs, who just won the SEC for what feels like the 1 billionth time in the last 5 years.
Ever since Kirby got there.
Yeah.
It's a big one there for Ole Miss and Georgia. I think this was a really interesting game, because obviously you look back at what happened in that first game between these two teams. Obviously, it was a really high-scoring game between Ole Miss and Georgia. I was really anticipating that matchup, because there was a few it felt like for Ole Miss there was a few teams that had their number, so to speak. Alabama obviously being one, Florida being one, and then Georgia. And I think that this is now kind of a chance to show the world that they don't have a Georgia problem anymore.
Well, I mean, when you go back to this game, obviously it was the only loss on the season for Ole Miss, but I will say this. It was 43-35. Gunnar Stockton threw 4 pass touchdowns. You can easily make the argument that these teams aren't the same as they were.
For sure.
But I will say this. Since Georgia lost that game between the hedges to Alabama, the biggest test they've had was, in my opinion, against this Ole Miss team.
Ole Miss, yeah.
And you could easily make the argument that Ole Miss should have won this game.
Mm-hmm.
But as we talked about, it seemed like the only thing we talked about leading up to this game was Trinidad Chambliss and his entire D2 career played against a combined 91,000 people.
Right.
And then he played against 91,000 people in that game alone.
Uh-huh.
So I think this game, neutral site in New Orleans, a rematch. Charlie Weiss Jr. is still going to be there. He just proved that he can still call the offense. He doesn't need Lane Kiffin, even though Lane's going to be probably 2 hours away up in Baton Rouge watching this game, trying to see if he can make some money. I think Ole Miss honestly wins a rematch just based off the fact of it's so hard to beat the same team twice. And Georgia, I mean, yeah, they dominated Alabama. But I don't know. It's just so hard to beat a team twice. That's like the one thing that's like trumping my decision right now.
It's a weird Georgia team to try to handicap because like you take the Tennessee game, they go up and down the field with Tennessee, and then they take the Georgia Tech game, which I know is a rivalry game. They score 16 points there.
Right.
It just feels. I'm really interested to see the game plan going into this. Yeah. Does Kirby Smart is his game plan to just take the ball out of Trinidad Chambliss' hands and just say, hey, we're going to play a ground and pound style? Or do they say, hey, look, we've run it up and down I was about to say the court. It feels like basketball on grass. Run up and down the field like we did against Tennessee because they think, okay, we had that kind of guy that could do it. Because I feel like Kirby feels that they can play any way that you want to, like any way that the other team wants to. So he wants to be able to dictate it the way he will. So I don't know the over under on this one. I'm gonna go.
Well, I'll tell you what. Georgia's a touchdown favorite, which I think you just talked about Indiana getting a lot of points. That's a lot of points. I honestly am surprised this isn't closer to 4 like what we saw in some of the first round matchups.
Right.
This should be 4 in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say a 4.
I would take Ole Miss at +7 while you can.
Yes, because I think that the number is going down. There's going to be a lot of love for Georgia. I think some public money. This game might land 5. I think it'll swing probably all the way to about 4, maybe land 5, possibly 6. But when we get to the early parts of these, the early lines, a lot of it is feeling out where the professional bettors are, because a lot of times it's not your Billies and Joes that are betting these games early. The line gets manipulated early by the big money, and then towards the end you play it the way that the public is. But the over/under, I had to go back and look at it. It's 55.5. So they're thinking. I like that. Yeah. So I mean, they're thinking. I mean, there will be some points here in this game. I'm just interested to see how Georgia does this after a very long layoff, because it would have been close to a month.
I'll point out a couple things. Georgia. You can throw the pass rush against Alabama outside because, I mean, Alabama just doesn't have a good run game by any means. So they can just stack the box and just put all the pressure on Ty Simpson in the world. I think the pass rush is still a little bit questionable.
Sure, yeah.
And Trinidad's good at escaping the pocket and using his legs. Ty Simpson's really not that guy.
No, he's not.
We've seen that pretty much the entirety of this year. But you flip it on the other side and you look at this game against Tulane for Ole Miss, they still cannot stop the run. And that's the one thing that's like kind of having me like, they have arguably, I'd make the argument they have the best offense in all of college football right now.
I'd agree, yeah.
The most explosive offense in college football at least.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit shaky on the defensive side, and their head coach is now the defensive coordinator, and he allowed 400 yards to Tulane. So there's just a little bit of uneasiness, I'd say, on that side of the ball. But I think the offense can kind of like in baseball, how you can like outslug your pitching woes. I think maybe the offense can outslug the defensive woes. And I won't say it's going to be like the first game where it's 43-35, but it's going to come down to who has the ball last.
Yeah.
And it usually does at this time of year.
Especially with these matchups with these two teams that know each other as well as they do. It's as you mentioned, it's a neutral site game, no longer a campus games. I do think that you could take that momentum though into those neutral site games.
I'll be there
to the Sugar Bowl, and yes, I
will be there. I'll be in section 600. So if you want to come say hi, I'll say hi.
Love it. You'll be there. So will Pete Gold, and he talked about the Sugar Bowl after their big win over Tulane.
I'm most excited. My brother had a second child last week, William, that I have not seen yet, and they live in New Orleans. And so I get to go see my nephew. I've got a niece, but it's my first nephew. that I'm super pumped up about. But, I was born and raised in Hammond. Obviously, recruiting-wise, we like to take a 5-hour geographical region and go recruit from. So we got a lot of guys from Louisiana, South Mississippi, Mobile area and all that. So I think that's really good for our players and then obviously our fans. We got a big Jackson group, South group, on the coast and all that. So I think New Orleans is a place everybody enjoys going to visit. And it's a great venue. The Sugar Bowl does an unbelievable job. We've been there several times at several different places. So we're going to be challenging a really good Georgia team, but it's a great venue, great place to play, and great food.
Coming up next here on Southeast Sports Plus, we will head over to College Station, another one of those big games that I think that if you're asking random people about who would be the favorite or who would be the most popular upset pick, it would have been Miami. They get it done over Texas A&M. We'll have that